where do people start? Maybe they're in debt, maybe they're not in debt. What do you typically see like day one? What's the first question you're asking them in conversation you're having with them? Where do you see people make the most mistakes after working with hundreds and hundreds of people? Like, what's the number one thing you're like, yeah, like 80% of the time I'm going to see this problem? Say people are like, okay, so I don't have any consumer debt. I'm in that next step. I've got my 6 to 12 months of emergency fund. I've got that stocked away. What sort of, maybe they've got it okay financial system. Maybe they're higher income earners. Like, where do you take them next? What have you seen with a lot of business owners that you've worked with? Maybe mistakes that they're making? Are they ones that I see is they just don't pay themselves enough, or they don't understand how to pay themselves, and they're so worried about growth. What do you typically see in some of the first conversations you have with business owners and mistakes that they do? Where do you see, just not business owners, but like where should couples start if they're trying to have this open dialogue? Like you talked about your story early on, and it was almost like your wife kicked this stuff off and you sort of like ran your own playbook. But what's your playbook now for couples starting out? All right, welcome to another round of Let's Buy Business. So we're going to dive in here with Dan Ockey. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for years, and he does some really amazing work in the personal finance world, especially if you're early on, you're trying to figure out how to work with your spouse on finances, or maybe you're in a little bit of debt. He coaches professionals to systemize their personal finances in 90 days or less, right? And then gets them on a track to start saving extra money. We go through so many cool stories. One of the cool stories he actually told me before we were hit record was he had a couple come to him, $55,000 in debt right out of school. And they kept telling him, we want passive income. We want passive income. They're $55,000 in debt. There's no passive income here. Passive income does not exist. Okay. So we talk about real scenarios, real stories, and real ways to get out of debt and get back on track, especially if you want to buy a business, start a business, whatever that might be. Okay. He's got a crazy story of telling his wife he's in a bunch of debt, or his fiance at the time, his wife now, right before they got married, that he's in a bunch of debt, right? And so we're going to start off with, where do people start day one when they're in debt? Where do they go? He talks about playbooks and getting on the same page from a financial standpoint and actually building the foundation first. Don't put that roof on the house when there's no house and there's no walls and there's no foundation, okay? We also talk about some of the areas that people make the most mistakes, such as there's 3 things to focus on. It's consumer debt. It's getting a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, I think is what he said, and then a solid financial system moving forward. Invest in the foundation, okay? And then we talk a lot about business ownership and how business owners don't pay themselves. And if you create stability in your own life as a business owner, it will then allow you to be much better within your own business. And he's got some very clear examples of how we do that. So you can learn more about him on LinkedIn, the show, also with Sensei Finance, links there in the show notes below. Let's go ahead and dive in. Awesome, Dan. We're live. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Ryan. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. It has been a couple of years. Excited to dive in. You've done some really fun things. So for people who don't know you, like, give us a little bit of background. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so my wife and I started a company about 8 years ago after we struggled with personal finance ourselves and just teaching other people and coaching people on their personal finance systems. And that has evolved to a company where now we have 26 coaches. We've had 1,500 clients go through our program, and we're just starting our financial planning firm. So it's growing, it's fun, and it's been a journey that I never thought I'd anticipate. But how do we get here is a different story. So I'm happy to answer some questions about that too.
Yeah, we'll dive in. Well, first off, it's incredible. You think about 8 years and 26 coaches now later. And I know, like, if you just look at your title, you're a personal finance coach, but you also, like, more specifically, we coach professionals to systemize their personal finances in 90 days and start saving extra $5,000 to $20,000 a year consistently. I love that. It's super clear. Maybe you've got a fascinating story. So maybe before we dive into Sensei and the personal finance mistakes that people make or how couples can start, maybe start us off like in your journey and how you started this business, because I find it pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so it starts with me spending a lot of money I didn't have. And maybe some of everyone can resonate to that.
Welcome to the average American.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. Yeah, I get it.
So I was in college. I was running a digital marketing agency, and I was spending more money than I had. And I went from, on track to being graduating debt free, no need to take out debt, to putting myself in about 20 grand of completely behavioral debt in about 6 months. And in this time, I was dating my wife. She thought I was wealthy, or because I was the way I spent money. And the first time we talked about money was a couple of weeks before we got married. She said, "Hey, Dan, how much, do you have any debt? And I was like, well, yeah, but I don't know how much. And that was not a good answer. So she gave me a piece of paper and a pen. She said, I do not want you to leave this couch until you have written down every single person you owe money. And that was the first time, I'm 20 something kid. I realize I am in $20,000 of debt. And this is completely my fault. This is completely from my spending. This is me accepting every credit card offer that came my way. And I had no desire to change because I'd read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I knew and I believed that leverage was the way forward. So she now knew how much debt I was in. It was enough of an amount for her to move forward with the wedding. But what the real problem was my beliefs, and that didn't come out until we got back from the honeymoon, and that didn't go very well. So we start fighting every day about money because she wants to budget. I'm like, who the freak needs a budget? And yeah, I don't need this. And our new marriage starts to feel impossible. It starts to feel like, or is this going to work? And so after one particularly painful argument, I slam the door, walk out, and I'm on a walk, and walking, thinking. I have this thought that comes to me, probably from a divine source, that says, "Are your money beliefs worth your marriage?" And in that moment, I just stopped. I stopped. I was like, no, she's worth more to me than whatever I think I know. So I get a text says you can come back to the house now. Uh, I come back to the house. I say, look, hon, I have no idea what to do. I have no idea how to change this. I have no idea where to start, but I'm willing. I'm willing to figure it out. And we did the next most logical thing. We went on vacation. Um,
You're like, let's go spend some money.
so we did. We went to California, and
I hope it was like camping out of the car or something, but no.
no,
You got a
no,
real expensive state.
it was a road trip to California. I'm pretty sure we put it all on the credit card. And we got there, and there was this successful couple, and we there, and they were, us in 20 years, happy, rich. Look, I mean, at least from what we could tell. We were staying in their house, so we got a little bit more up close look. Um, and they said some things. We opened up about our situation. They said some things that really helped me remove some shame, because there's this expectation as we become adults, especially if we're in business or want to be in business, that we should just be good at money, that we should just know how to do it, that we should have good systems in place already, that it should be as easy as breathing. And it's a skill. It's something that has to be learned. And they told me that. They said, look, this is something you can improve at, something that has to be practiced. It's something that you have to learn. And if and the second thing they said is, there's so many people who are good at money that have written things that can be a third party and helpful to you. And so their advice to us was, stop trying to do this by yourself. Go get some help. And that's true in a multitude of areas, right? Whether you're buying a business, building a business, whatever that may be. But it's also true with how you spend and manage money in your personal life and your business life. So they told us, Dave Ramsey, the last person in the world I wanted to listen to was Dave Ramsey. He was evil, but I had said I was willing to try. We downloaded the book, listened to it on the way home, write out our first financial plan together as a couple. We expect we're going to pay off 20 grand of debt in 6 months, or 2 years, excuse me, not 6 months. We start reading every financial book we get our hands on. Turns out there's a lot of people out other than Dave Ramsey who've written about this. We started interviewing millionaires. We spent, I think we tallied up about 1,000 hours learning about money, reading blogs, talking about it. It was like it was all we did. And we ended up paying off our 20 grand of debt in 6 months as college students.
Amazing. That's crazy.
And we thought we were the only ones who struggled with money still. So no
Yeah.
intention to start a company. We just shared our experience, and then people started coming, and they've kept coming for the last 8 years.
Oh, amazing. One of the things is when you go in 1,000 hours of something and you can become in the 1% of like just knowledge in an industry pretty quickly, but you also implemented what you learned. So I think that's like a huge takeaway. And then you shared it with others like, hey, like we did this and it helped us, it helped our marriage, it helped us get on the right track. And one of the things I feel like is an underutilized skill that people just don't do is when you do something interesting, just kind of, you don't need to brag about it, but you can also just say, hey, this is what worked for us. And more so than not, people are experiencing the same issues that you've run into, right? So you start this company, you're working with your wife together. I know you used to be in tech sales. There was a certain moment where you were like, let's go full time in this. Like you and your wife, what made that decision to go full time on this business?
I got laid off.
Uh,
So
it was like a blessing in disguise,
it,
right? As they say.
It was. I was running. I was running sales for Crisp that does the software for Swig and Fizz in Utah, those soda shops. And COVID hit April 2020. They the outside investors let go of the majority of the marketing and sales team. And we were now, we were expecting a baby number two in 6 months. And so we just said, Sensei was making $200 to $300 a month at that point because we were just selling courses. And we just said, what if we gave this a go? And a couple things happened that helped that I want to be really transparent about. One is, if anyone knows this, the unemployment benefits during COVID were just ridiculous. I mean, I was,
Especially if you got laid off, right?
yeah,
Like, didn't they give you huge salaries for a while, right?
yes, and so we were still living in a small 2 bedroom apartment, and so we could cover our expenses from the unemployment insurance. So that gave us a bandwidth. And then a second thing happened. A guy I went to church with was running an online internet business, and he came over and he said, "Hey, why don't you come work for me for $14 an hour? You can see the inside of our business, how we structure everything, and apply that to us." So for 6 months, I was able to cover my expenses. We had no debt, and we had a 6 month emergency fund, so we were in a really stable financial position. And we were able to then I was able to go learn from this guy for some additional pay, which counteracted the unemployment insurance because you have to count it against it. But 6 months later, the month my son was born, we had our first 8 grand month, and that was it was like, wow, we're gonna do
It's
this.
life changing for you and for your clients.
Absolutely. And that has just grown to being from courses to now being a full 24-month coaching program to now getting started to help people with their investments and full financial planning and tax strategy.
That's incredible, Dan. It's fun to hear your story, and I think I would drive my wife absolutely nuts if we worked together. So it's also really fun when you can see couples that work together and they make it work and a variety of fronts. So let's dive in, because what I think is going to be helpful. You run some pretty awesome things. Obviously, we have some links in the show notes where people can get some free courses and free deep dives and stuff. But maybe Dan, set us down this path, right? Like you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of couples and individuals too, just with their money and helping them get their finances right. Where do people start? Maybe they're in debt, maybe they're not in debt. What do you typically see, like day one? What's the first question you're asking them and conversation you're having with them?
Yeah, the first thing we have to figure out is typically where what we want to figure out is where do you want to go, right? Because most of us have dreams and aspirations. Maybe it's we want to build or start a business. Maybe it's we want to be able to live on a lake or a beach. I don't know. Everybody has different dreams. Whatever that means to you. The thing that happens is there's a set playlist and rules that we can repeat. There's playbooks we can implement to get people to there, but it depends on the situation. And so the problem that most people, from what we've started working with, is they typically don't come with a clear understanding of where the money is already actually going. And if we want to get from San Francisco to Dallas or Austin, we have to understand what direction are we already headed? What vehicles are we already taking? And most people typically don't have a system in place to understand that. They don't know exactly where all the money's going. If they think they do, they're often off by 2 to 3 times with their discretionary
It's a
spending.
big number.
Yes,
Yeah. And it doesn't take much. If you're going like in that example, you think like, okay, what if I'm just off a couple degrees? You don't end up in Dallas, you end up in Chicago. It doesn't take very much.
exactly. And that's what I think most people realize. They think they're working towards this dream, but they're actually headed in a completely different direction. And if
So
you just realign, you can change it pretty quickly.
So day one, being real with them. Hey, this is where you're at. This is where the money's going. This is like how much money is coming in. And then what's the next step from that in terms of like, where do you see people make the first change? Is it understanding their expenses or even truly understanding how much money they make sometimes as a business owner too? They don't know. So what do you see
Absolutely.
next step?
Well, there's two different scenarios, right? So if I'm a business owner, I would approach those two things differently. So if I was a business owner, what I see a lot with business owners is they're conflating their personal and their business way too much, and it creates a huge mess, and it's really hard to get clarity on where the money's going. And so if I'm a business owner, you must separate your personal and business expenses. It's not even a question. If you want clarity, if you want to accelerate your progress, it is a must. Different bank accounts, different credit cards, etc. Different budgets. That is the first step there. If I'm a W-2 employee, it's a little bit easier to understand where the money's going, but also making sure I have a plan for that. So if I am just getting started, what we do with all our clients, we download Monarch Money, we hook up all their bank accounts, all their credit cards. We actually, for business owners, we actually do two accounts. So a um, a personal expense tracker and a business expense tracker, just so that they can start to see and separate the difference between those in their lives.
And so that was Monarch Money, great resource there. As you're kind of going down this path, obviously it's very unique for each individual, and then you're overlaying it with their goals. Where do you see people make the most mistakes after working with hundreds and hundreds of people? Like, what's the number one thing you're like, yeah, like 80% of the time I'm going to see this problem?
They try to put the roof on the house before building the foundation, and here's what I mean by that.
I
Um,
love that.
they
Yeah.
Most of us, the things that excite us financially are not doing the boring basics. It's investing, it's buying businesses, it's real estate, it's all the fun stuff that gets our blood going. The truth is, if you just take some time, sometimes it's 2 to 3 years, but just establish a solid foundation, the probability of your success dramatically increases. And here's what I define as a solid foundation: consumer debt free and a 3 to 6 month emergency fund with a solid financial system in place, meaning you know where your extra cash flow is and you have power to direct it to where it's going to go. So many people start trying to build businesses or buy businesses. And again, I know that there's different circumstances, that there's exceptions to every rule. But it is my conviction that we would have way more successful business owners and way more wealthy people if we would stop trying to skip building the foundation. And so it pay off your debts and build a savings. I have read every financial book I can get a hands on. Every single one talks about paying off consumer debt and building an emergency fund. But apparently, we all think we're smarter than that. You are not. is my message to people, and that may rub you the wrong way. But look, I've done this 1,500 times.
What I think is interesting too, it's like everybody. I've never heard someone say I should listen to Dave Ramsey. They always say, "Oh, he's great for most Americans," but I'm like beyond that. Like it's just like I don't need to get out of consumer debt. Like I'm beyond that. And you said three things. You said consumer debt, 3 to 6 months fund, and then you said a solid financial system, so that once you've got those two in place of debt free from consumer stuff, you've got your emergency fund, then you actually have this system to build on, right? That's
Exactly.
you've already got your foundation that's going to then build your house before your roof.
Exactly. And anyone who's built a business knows that it's going to be 3 times as difficult and take 3 times as long as you expect in a lot of situations. So the principle of this is most people don't view those things as investing, but they are, because you're investing in the solid foundation you're going to build off from that point. And so it becomes this solid foundation that when the storms come, when the difficulties arise, when it takes longer, you can wait it out. And if you can wait, you can win, as our friend Alex Hormozy always says. So that is the principle: is give yourself the capacity to be able to wait and win financially, and your probability of success, in my opinion, will dramatically increase. um,
What I like about that is I've actually said that in a slightly different way to many entrepreneurs going down a certain path. And I highly recommend people, if they're starting something or doing something new, to not quit their day job. And the reason is if you can afford to say no, it allows you to say no to a lot of bad opportunities. Or like, say you're launching an agency, Dan, and you need to pick up a client to pay for the bills. You're going to pick up any client that will give you money, regardless of whether they're a good fit or not. And that's really bad revenue. And you don't know what bad revenue is until you've had bad revenue. And then you're like, oh, I hate bad revenue is worse than
yeah.
not having any revenue.
Yeah.
Um,
I hate
and
my life
so,
worse now. Yeah.
yeah, I just compounded this thing. And now I have to deal with this bad client on something we don't do. Now I'm customizing it and I can't go find the better clients. And now I'm even more stressed than trying to make that, mortgage payment or rent or whatever it might be. I love what you said. If you can wait, you can win, or, like just investing in the foundation first. Say people are like, okay, so I don't have any consumer debt. I'm in that next step. I've got my 6 to 12 months of emergency fund. I've got that stocked away. What sort of, maybe they've got it okay financial system. Maybe they're higher income earners. Like where do you take them next?
And these are W-2s
Yeah, W-2s.
with the goal of owning a business.
Yeah, that's probably going to be most of our listeners. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're in that state, this is your next goal: is to do do due diligence. Your next financial goal is to really figure out how to make a wise decision and to not overdo it. I you know, I had a client that was in this situation. They were so excited to get into real estate. They bought 6 homes from what they thought was a trusted source without doing an inspection, and that became a 4-year nightmare, or 2 or 3-year nightmare. What your job is if you beat phase 1, built the foundation in our terminology, it is now time to get educated and spend your extra cash flow and resources on investing and learning how to make a good decision and not going too fast, because you've never done it before. And so it's listening to people like Ryan, it's having conversations with people who've done it. It's spending your 1,000 hours learning how to buy a business the right way. And that's where your cash flow should be going too, is investing in that, but not moving too fast until you've developed criteria of what making a good decision looks like, and you found a solution that fits that criteria, which will obviously continue to evolve over time. But you can avoid so many mistakes if you be be aggressive in your learning and education around this, and in developing a solid criteria from those who've already done it, and waiting until you find the opportunity that actually fits.
I love that. There's been multiple times, Dan, where you've said, well, before you start running, figure out how far you want to go, because what you're taking for a marathon is very different if you're just going to run around the block once. So you're running a 100-meter dash, and multiple times you've said, well, before we start finding the business to buy, let's invest in our education. Let's invest in ourselves. Let's figure out how to do this. Let's figure out what's our criteria that we can work backwards into, to what can we afford, what do we like, what skill sets are we bringing to the table, what do we actually want to be doing. And so over and over again, I think we might get excited about something, but there's no really plan after that. And you're like, hey, there actually is a foundation that we need to build for any of these goals or things that we're trying to achieve.
Yes, and it's way faster than rushing into it in the long run, because you
Yeah.
avoid so many of the pitfalls by listening to those who've done it successfully before you and just having the patience to wait. And so that's the beauty of completing phase 1, is you and having a strong foundation is you can. That's the beauty of spending 1,000 hours or whatever the time is. It can be accelerated when you listen to those who've gone before you. But yes, it's just having the wherewithal to think. It's being humble and recognizing you've never done this before. There are people who have. Slow down a little bit, get clear about it is what it is exactly that you want, and then wait till you've found
I love that. Dan, so you mentioned, okay, W2. I know you were talking before we jumped on about business owners. We have a lot of business owners who listen to this. One of the things I see with business owners is either they don't pay themselves consistently, or they don't pay themselves enough, or like you said, obviously step one is don't commingle your personal and your business spending. You have to separate that. But what have you seen with a lot of business owners that you've worked with? Maybe mistakes that they're making? Are they ones that I see is they just don't pay themselves enough, or they don't understand how to pay themselves, and they're so worried about growth. What do you typically see in some of the first conversations you have with business owners and mistakes that they do?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake is you are the most valuable asset to your business, and so it's so
Mm,
easy to
okay.
sacrifice yourself. But if you don't pay yourself, you're gonna burn out and not want to work for you anymore, at some
You're gonna
point.
fire yourself, yeah.
You're gonna, yeah, by exhaustion. And so one of the biggest mistakes is I see is people don't factor in paying themselves into their profit margin, and that should be, for a lot of service-based businesses, between 30 to 50% starting out, especially when you're doing all the work, where it's just factoring where 30 to 50% of every dollar you are getting. And if you can't do that, you have to have something that you're going to rely back on, because that's going to turn down on you really quick. And you're going to have to do what Ryan said, which is go get bad revenue, which just complicates the situation even further. So yes, even if you can't get there now, we need to map out a plan of what is the ideal percentage, and it's typically going to be higher than you think it is, to pay yourself. I really personally struggled with this when we started implementing this in our business, because I was willing to sacrifice whatever it took to be an entrepreneur. And so when my wife was like, no, we need to pay ourselves 30%, the book Profit First helps some principles. There's things I would edit about it.
Fantastic book,
Yeah,
by the way.
it is
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, Profit First is great. And this is where I'm building off a lot of these things with my own anecdotal experience. But we implemented a 30% rule where we would pay ourselves 30%. And we didn't do it initially. But once we did, I was surprised at how things started to increase from our revenue side, because all of a sudden I knew myself and my family were going to be taken care of. And so it helped me make different decisions than I would have otherwise made. And so anything you can do to create stability and consistency for yourself will allow the business to thrive, because you'll make better long-term decisions. It's the same principle of having a strong foundation. It's make sure the golden goose is healthy so that you can lay golden eggs.
Mm, I love that. As we start to wrap up with a couple minutes left here, Dan, many people listening might have a significant other or somebody that they're, maybe a long-term partner, maybe their spouse, whatever. What I also find too is someone manages the finances, the other one doesn't really care that much, and you just don't really talk about it much unless there's a problem, right? Where should couples start? What do you recommend, day one for those types of couples? Because I see this over and over again, especially from a business owner. And sometimes their justification is, well, I'm under a lot of stress and I don't want us to both be stressed or something like that, right? Where do you see, just not business owners, but like where should couples start if they're trying to have this open dialogue? Like you talked about your story early on, and it was almost like your wife kicked this stuff off and you sort of like ran your own playbook. But what's your playbook now for couples starting out?
The principle here is, if you would like to succeed long term, you will be more likely to succeed. And so, um, your spouse may hate finances, want nothing to do with it. You may hate finances, want nothing to do with it. The truth is, if you want to go far, you have to go together. The playbook to do that is to get a third party. If you're busy and you have so much going on, the probability of you being able to sit down and have a perfectly functioning system that you both like and both agree on and works for both of you from the get-go is close to zero. So
Zero.
yeah,
You've never seen it, I'm sure. Yeah.
it's very low. And you've already tried before. Most people, it's not like most people haven't tried to have money conversations or budget before. And so go get a proven system. It doesn't have to be us. Go work with a third party who can work with both of you. It doesn't mean you're both going to have to sit down and look at every receipt. It just means you're both going to be in agreement where you're going, how you're going to get there, where the money is going to go. That provides so much peace and utility to your life. It's unreal. Imagine what would happen in your life if your spouse was completely on board with a financial plan. You were completely together. That is a competitive advantage that few understand and few enjoy. But it's extremely possible to do. Get a third party.
Amazing. Um, there's there's so many avenues that people can go down this path and learn more. I think opening up your brain, it's like the 1,000 hours, the hundreds of books you've read, the hundreds of couples you worked with. I'm waiting for your book to come out here, Dan, and we'll recommend it here one day. So before we jump into where people can find you and follow you, we ask everybody, what's one of the most creative or weirdest ways you've seen someone make money? And I'm sure you've seen a lot with the hundreds of couples you've worked with.
I've seen a lot, not all of them ethical. The
Anything goes here, but you won't name names.
yeah, my favorite one that stuck with me right when you asked the question was, there was this guy Randy Garn. He did a lot with like Tony Robbins and stuff. But in college, he was trying to be really entrepreneurial, and he just like, you think, what are you going to do in college, and for your, how do you make money off your fellow college students in college? It's something that's
They
repeated.
don't have any money either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, he just took out everybody's trash. So you think about all the apartments, all the dorms, and you think he just went and every day, every on trash day once a week, they each paid him $5, and they just went door to door and took everyone's trash out, and they were incredibly profitable, like and tens of thousands of dollars in revenue, and they would just that's how they paid for school. And so, sometimes we overcomplicate this, but like there's services, there's needs and services everywhere. And that's I love that story, because he just went to his next door neighbor and said, "Can I take out your trash?" And then just did that a lot of times.
You just like there's no cost. It's just his time.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect business with nobody who has any money. Like, love it. It reminds me of this college kid a couple years ago. Just knocked on our neighborhood, and this is not a new idea. And he says, "I'm gonna paint your address on your curb. It's $20, and if you want, I'll paint your favorite university on there." And he had a couple stencils of the local universities, and I was like, "Yes, done." And I was like, Paul, Dan, my boys, I'm like, okay, you guys have got to watch this. Like, this is true hustle. And when I went out there and I was like, okay, Paul, Dan, look at what he's doing. Like, he came and sold us, and he did our neighbor, and then he did this. And like his per hour was probably $200 an hour. He was doing it in 4 minutes, knocking everybody out of the neighborhood. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is more than he'd make if he went and got a normal job. And obviously, it's all cash, it's all Venmo. He's not declaring any taxes on it. I love that hustle. I love that idea of just, I'm going to go make $5 and it takes 3 minutes. I'm going to do it over and over and over again. So, Dan, appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy guy. People can find you on LinkedIn. It seems like that's where you're most active. Where can people find you, follow you, learn more about what they're doing?
LinkedIn is definitely the best spot. And then our website, if you want to get started, we'll help you get started building a budget for just $1. We'll build a whole budget for you, our Sensei way, for just $1 on our website. I'll start with our free budgeting class, or just follow along. We've got a lot of good stuff coming.
That's awesome. And we also have their free budgeting class, a link in the show notes to click on that. Dan, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Thanks for checking out the Let's Buy a Business channel. If you want to learn more, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest tips on acquiring businesses. We've also got our newsletter, which you can also subscribe to here, where you want to get the latest tips and deals that are happening right now. These are live deals. And then, of course, with the link below, you can join our course and memberships for the most serious searchers out there, and you want to get serious results.
Yeah. Sometimes I get so mad, there's no controlling me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, I might grab a bat, I don't know. My wrath, my blood boils over like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay